Hello, fantasy football fans. Welcome to the 9 Route, the fantasy football show that goes deep to help you win. I'm here, as always, with my fellow football guys writer, Mr. Alex Miglio. How you doing, buddy? How's it going tonight?
Woohoo! The Giants just won. We were waiting. We were waiting until the game was over to start the show. Not really, but they just won.
Nice.
Austin's like, what? What baseball?
That's baseball, right? Eli Manning didn't do something big tonight. I didn't think there was a football game tonight.
Elusive Wednesday night football matchup.
Nice. Oh, you ready for Wednesday night football?
They don't broadcast it on television. It's in a dark alley.
Is it on Fox Sports 4?
Yeah, something like that. Anyway.
Nice. Welcome to our show. We're excited to have you guys back listening with us. We've got tons of injuries to cover. We'll tell you who to buy low on and sell high on. And Philly and Tampa Bay are on the bye. Not a huge week for bye weeks, so we'll tell you lots of things about our rankings and how the various injuries and news have impacted our outlook for Week 7. We'll also give you our daily fantasy sports picks of the week. And we'll give you the stack of the week for you to try in your daily games if you dare. We were going to have a special guest. Bear from Football Guys was going to join us, Bear Heiser, and he is unfortunately couldn't make it, but so we'll try to get him on another time. So if you're here to see Bear, sorry, but hopefully you'll stick around and hang out with us for a bit. So let's dive right in here, Alex. Let's talk about some of the bigger injuries that happened this week. Victor Cruz tore his patellar tendon. That is serious. I mean, that's the kind of thing that could keep him out for a year. Like, he may not be ready for the beginning of next year. This could impact his career. What do you think this does for, Cruz dynasty-wise? And do you see, what do you see in terms of this receiving core going forward for this season for redraft leaguers?
It's really tough for Cruz. I feel bad for him. It's a tough injury to come back from. He had surgery the next day, probably to try to get as quickly as possible into rehab. And he was already kind of down in terms of fantasy value. I mean, to apologize that we're just going straight from the injury to fantasy, but this is a fantasy show. So, the past couple of years he hadn't been great in fantasy football to begin with, and then he has this injury that he's going to come back from. So his value took a real big hit. I don't know what to make of him going forward, but hopefully he recovers and comes back stronger, and a year from now we'll be saying how great of a comeback story he is.
Yeah, I want to see him dancing in the end zone some more. Like, you're right. It's like the injury and these guys' livelihood is number one, and we feel bad for them when they get hurt. And at the same time, it's sort of our jobs to make sure that we talk about sort of the impact on the game and how we see things, how to predict things going forward too, for fans that are concerned about their fantasy teams and looking to see how the NFL landscape might change. So yeah, our thoughts go out to Cruz as well as some of these other guys we're going to mention who had big injuries this week. I like Ruben Randle a lot here. He's the bigger red zone threat than Odell Beckham Jr. Obviously, he's got more experience in this offense, but I could see Beckham Jr. also stepping forward in Cruz's absence. I think both of these guys could easily emerge as wide receiver twos. Maybe one of them shows up as a wide receiver two, and maybe the other one's a flex play going forward. I kind of like Randle more. Which do you like more, Beckham or Randle?
I definitely like Randle more. He's a seasoned veteran, with upside. He's a big guy. Granted, Beckham has upside as well, but we saw last week he kind of fell off after his debut. And I think, like a lot of rookies, I think he's going to have inconsistent output from week to week. So I would rather have Randle for sure. I mean, I don't know that I would pay a lot to get him or anything like that, but I think that he's got wide receiver 2 value the rest of the way. He was already looking pretty good before the Cruz injury, and I think he's just going to get more targets. Another guy that I think could be kind of a sneaky pickup with Cruz gone is Preston Parker, who had seen a decent number of targets before Beckham came back from injury. So Now Parker's back in the picture. With Gerald Jernigan is out for the year. Victor Cruz is out for the year. That kind of puts Parker in that wide receiver 3 role there for the Giants.
Yep, next man up. I think we're going to cry when we move on to this next topic because the Dolphins had a horrible weekend against the Packers with that last-minute loss, as well as losing Noshawn Moreno to a torn ACL. He's done for the year. If you don't know, Alex and I, our favorite team is the Miami Dolphins. We try not to make this the all Dolphins show, but here's your opportunity to cry, Alex. Go for it.
That was, I think that...
those acting glasses paid off.
There's a reason that I'm... Never mind. I was big on Moreno coming back and felt bad for recommending people start him over the weekend because he only got he was limited in touches, and I didn't realize that he got injured. Nobody found out until Monday, and it was kind of strange. I think I read something that the Dolphins didn't disclose his injury properly or something on Sunday, but it's a big blow to that. For fantasy purposes, if you were waiting for him to come back, it's certainly a big blow. It's a big boon for Lamar Miller, who had been performing well without Moreno there. And he performed well again last week. I expect him to be a solid running back too. Perhaps even with top 12 upside, depending on the matchup. For the Dolphins' offense, I think that it is going to be, like as you say, next man up. Damian Williams, who is not Daniel Thomas.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness it's not Daniel Thomas who's number 2 here.
In fairness to Daniel Thomas, I like to bag on him, but he actually did pretty well in the one game where he had a lot of touches this year. He was cut.
There was that one time he was good. There was that one time.
But Damian Williams is ahead of him on the depth chart right now. I don't know what that means, but I think that probably means that he's the handcuff for Lamar Miller going forward.
Yeah, and I think Miller's the guy here. Like you said, I think he's high-end running back 2 here. The Dolphins have been running the ball real well, and I expect great things from Miller. He's been performing pretty well in the passing game too, and so I think he's not going to get shut down by like these big run defenses. They'll mix him up and find ways to get him the ball regardless of the matchup. So I'm excited about what Miller offers fantasy owners going forward. Another guy in the AFC East with a torn ACL, Stephen Ridley. I don't think he's maybe officially been put on IR yet, but it sounds like he's done for the year. What do you think this does for the Patriots and their backfield? I'm actually a little gun shy about this whole backfield in general. They just seem to have a different game plan every week, and so I'm trying to temper my expectations for Shane Vereen. Are you, going crazy for Vereen at this point?
No, yeah, I'm with you. I think that that backfield is right now a nightmare. However, in a week we might find out that that we should, everybody should have jumped on Shane Vereen and maybe tried to trade for him, and he'll get 25 touches, and we will have been Bill Belichick. But I wouldn't bank on that. I wouldn't bet on that. Actually, I think that a lot of people jumped on the Brandon Bolden train when Stephen Ridley went down. But I actually think that James White is a sneaky pickup. He was a touted rookie in the preseason. Everybody liked him a lot. I didn't really like what I saw, and hence he was inactive for most of the games this year. But I think a big reason for that is Bolden contributes on special teams, so they had to leave some players inactive, and I think James White was kind of a victim of the whole special teams thing. Now that Ridley's injured, I think White is going to come into the picture. I know that some people are talking about Jonas Gray coming off the practice squad, but I would much rather have White, who's on the active or on the roster anyway, the 53-man, than a guy that's coming off the practice squad.
Yeah, all I can say is if some running back has a big game this week and someone else in your league thinks that means that New England's figured it out going forward, sell high on that guy. I don't care who it is who has the big week. If it's James White, if it's Brandon Bolden, if it's Shane Vereen, if they blow up this week, trade them. Get rid of them.
Yes.
Yeah, because the next week it's going to be somebody different or a different game plan or something else is going to happen. So, keep an eye on that. If one of these guys, blows up for 20 fantasy points or something, sell high on that guy. The Cincinnati receiving core is another area of scrutiny this week with a lot of injuries. They were hoping that they were going to get back Marvin Jones. It turned out his foot injury, kept having issues, so they put him on IR. AJ Green doesn't look like he's going to go this week because of turf toe. He may even be out longer than just this week. And in their absence, Mohamed Sanu had another even bigger game than he had the week before with 14 targets, 10 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. That followed up a decent game the week before, 70 yards and a touchdown. They get Indy in week 7. How high are you on Mohamed Sanu? I like him a lot.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
Yes. I've been down on Sanu the whole year, and he's proven me wrong time and again. And Marvin Jones is now injured. I feel bad because I didn't realize how bad his injury was. I kind of said, hey, you should go pick him up last week before realizing he had re-injured himself. So, he's proven everybody wrong that doubted him, and everybody right that was high on him. And going forward, I think even when A.J. Green comes back, he's going to be really valuable. So I would definitely keep him if you have him and not sell high.
Yeah, I think he's a wide receiver 2 with A.J. Green out. I think he's probably a wide receiver 3 with A.J. Green back. I think he's still going to see a decent amount of action. So I think he's a top 30 receiver the rest of the way, maybe top 25 if A.J. Green misses multiple weeks. Something like that. That's how I feel.
I did see earlier today that there's an outside shot A.J. Green might play this week. I don't buy it. I don't think that he necessarily will. I probably wouldn't bank on a big game from him if he does. Although
decoy.
It goes against what we were talking about earlier this season about you have to play your studs. But man, I'm a little iffy on that. Same with Calvin Johnson. So I think that I would be careful.
Yeah, I think it was funny that earlier in the week the coach was like, "Yeah, he might play," and then he's like, "Yeah, I'm not playing this week." And so it's like, I don't know.
I don't know. See, I missed that. I guess I missed that. You talked to Green. You're friends with him.
Oh, yeah. He and I go way back.
Yes, you took him to dinner, and he told you he's not playing.
Yeah, we're old pals. No, that is definitely not breaking news here. I read that somewhere. Maybe it was the Inquirer. Go get you some Mohamed Sanu. Hopefully you already got him, and if you haven't, I think it's worth throwing a decent amount of fab at him to try to get him, or maybe make him.
He's available. What league is he available? I mean, if he's available, go get him right away.
Yeah, exactly. And then Darren Sproles sprained his MCL. It's another running back injury from this past week. Fortunately, the Eagles are on the bye this week, and so we're not going to get a huge update on this, but it sounds like it could end up being a multi-week injury. Maybe not. And then McCoy, when Sproles went out, had a pretty decent game here, 154 total yards. No TD, again, but over 150 total yards. Do you think the big game for McCoy was because Sproles was out, or is this a little bit of McCoy getting his mojo back?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think McCoy looked good before Sproles went out, so I wouldn't say that it was all because of Sproles' absence. But yeah, definitely having Sproles out helped McCoy get more touches, I think. The TD will come. He's got to score at some point. So I think that he's still a pretty good buy low guy. 15.4 points is, standard points is, not a bad total, but the owner might be looking to sell, thinking, hey, he's not going to do that again. So I like him. I think Sproles might be out for week 8, maybe week 9. Ryan Matthews has a sprained MCL and he's still not running. So I mean, they're all different, but it's tough to say, oh, well, yeah, so he'll be back. I think McCoy is going to be fine going forward.
Yeah, I think if someone's still trying to shop McCoy at running back 2 value, that's a guy you want to buy. But I wouldn't pay running back 1 value for him just yet. There's a lot of injuries and intrigue going on in the New Orleans at Detroit game coming up this week. It seems like both teams are going to be missing key players. It doesn't look like Calvin Johnson's going to go this week, and it also doesn't look like Jimmy Graham's going to go this week. Calvin Johnson was out last week, and there was a golden opportunity wasted by the rest of the Detroit receiving corps.
But I see some silver lining.
Ooh, do tell.
He he was targeted. Was it 12 times last week?
12 times, yeah.
That's a pretty big target count. He didn't really capitalize. It was kind of a defensive battle there. But I think that he's going to see a lot of targets, and he's the kind of guy that runs out. Can get a lot of yak.
What was that?
A lot.
Yak.
Yeah, that's what a lot of his fantasy owners did last week. But
boom.
But he can run after the catch. So I think he can. When he gets a lot of targets, he can break one. So especially with Calvin Johnson out, he's going to see a lot of extra targets.
Yeah, I think don't give up on Golden Tate here. I think he has another chance to have a big week this week. And like you said, those targets are going to turn into something better than 44 yards this week. I can't see how he can get worse than 44 yards this week. And then on the other side of the ball, Jimmy Graham, he's got a sprained shoulder. It sounds like he might be out about 2 to 3 weeks. How does this impact the New Orleans offense? Are there any other tight ends here that you're interested in? There's Josh Hill, there's Ben Watson. I'm kind of not looking at those guys at all. But maybe it's more important how it affects how the rest of the offense runs here.
Well, I think Josh Hill is a top 20 tight end right now, isn't he? He's or close to it, because he has those 2 touchdown catches that he stole from Jimmy Graham in the past. So I wouldn't really put much stock into that. Actually, I think Ben Watson, off the top of my head, I feel like Ben Watson is being targeted more. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not looking at the numbers, but looking at last game, I felt like Watson got a few targets, and I think he might be a better plug than Hill. But I don't know that I would do either of those guys over. Maybe a Clay Harbor if he's available. Even Luke Wilson, who has been targeted pretty heavily not heavily, but he's been targeted several times by Russell Wilson. Didn't have a great game last game, but I just don't trust these New Orleans guys that are not named Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, especially against a tough Detroit defense. Detroit's defense has been playing really well, kind of in all aspects of their defense, and so that's going to make it tough for Drew Brees, especially without his favorite weapon in Jimmy Graham. Do you see Cooks or Colston or anybody else sort of emerging in Graham's absence that you're like, ooh, I got to make sure I get that guy in my lineup?
In PPR leagues, I've definitely put Cooks in either way. I think he's seeing a lot of targets. He's going to make a lot of catches. We saw a couple weeks ago it was a terrible game from a standard standpoint, but I think he caught like 9 passes for 50-something yards, and that's huge in PPR. So I think that they're going to keep him involved. He might be even more involved with Graham out. I think this helps the running backs. I think they're going to get a lot of targets. Pierre Thomas had a huge game before the bye, and not that I expected another huge game, but I feel like he's going to kind of get more. Even with Mark Ingram back, I think it helps Thomas.
And that's a good point, because Mark Ingram is coming back this week. That's going to divide the work kind of 3 ways, maybe 4 ways. Sometimes Cadet gets into this mix. But, Ingram's probably going to reclaim his role ahead of Kiri Robinson in this offense. And kind of, I would expect Ingram and Pierre Thomas to sort of lead this backfield. Is that kind of what you see, or do you think Robinson's kind of carved out a bigger piece of this pie for himself?
Well, we saw Robinson scored, I believe, the first touchdown of the season or at least among running backs for the Saints. So, he's still going to be involved. I think Ingram played well enough to kind of get his role back now that he's coming back. So I don't expect Robinson to be a major factor. I think he's heavily touchdown dependent. Really wouldn't trust him in fantasy world. He's not, he's not Anton Smith, who's going to, who's going to score a 60-yard touchdown every game. Apparently, but
it's in the game plan. They stole the Norv Turner Cordero Patterson plan and shifted it over to Atlanta.
Matrix. It's like every time there's one play a game where the defense just is not there when Anton Smith catches the ball and he just runs for 50, 60, 70 yards for a touchdown. It's ridiculous.
Whoa! I've never seen a running back move that fast.
It's funny. He's saving me, and I'm in a flex league with Jake Seeley. It's a best ball league, and one of my last picks was Anton Smith, and he's been one of it's best ball, so he's been one of my guys pretty much every week, just because he's totally saving my butt because my running backs are terrible. So there you go.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. That's the fun of different types of leagues, right? Best ball league, you'll end up with some oddity like that where you don't have to, go out of your way to start the guy. It's just if he scores, he shows up in your lineup. It's pretty fun. The last bit of injury news we have here is it sounds like Robert Griffin III is on the comeback trail. And Coach Jay Gruden came out today and said that RG3 will be the starter once he's back to being himself, kind of at full speed, emotionally, physically, all of the above. What do you think this does for the Redskins? Do you see this coming soon? Are you like, man, if RG3 is available, you better get him because he's a top 10 quarterback? What do you see here?
I'm a little skittish on Robert Griffin. I mean, I do think he's going to be the starter. I don't know why they would stick with Kirk Cousins, who has been awful. I mean, like, he's had pretty decent fantasy stats, but that doesn't, watching him play, he's been terrible. So, I don't think that there's any way.
You don't think Gruden's going to leave him in there to help appease fantasy fans? That just seems so selfish of him.
Exactly. So, I think that Griffin is going to be back. I don't know how well he's going to play. He didn't look great in the preseason. He had a lost fantasy line in week 1. I think he threw like one pass, past the line of scrimmage that game or something. It was ridiculous. But he's the guy, and I mean, I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to get him, but he might be on the waiver wire at this point. Who knows? And as a second quarterbacks go, Griffin's not bad. He can run. He can, and that has value in fantasy leagues. I think the biggest thing is Pierre Garçon is probably going to see his value take an upswing, and Deshaun Jackson's going to go down because it looked like Cousins started to favor Jackson in the past couple weeks, and we know that Garçon was a favorite of Griffin's in the past, and I think we're going to see that come back.
Yeah, I think that's good insight. I think that's probably the biggest impact here. I don't think RG3 is a top 10 quarterback on a per-game basis, and rest of season, I don't think he lasts. I don't think he plays. He's going to be sort of in and out of the lineup because of his style of play here. So as a second quarterback in a one-quarterback league, I like that because he has upside. That's a good pickup. But I would not count on him as a start him most of the time kind of guy. I don't think you're going to be able to do that. So get him if that fits your needs, but I wouldn't go crazy for it. They got a Week 10 bye coming up. It sounds like he might play before that bye, but if there's any kind of hesitation about this injury recovery, they're going to sit him until Week 11. But they get Tampa Bay in Week 11, so that could be
That'll fix everything. That'll fix everything. Well, there you go. He's going to throw for 4 touchdowns on that game.
Yeah, so, I mean, you could stash him for that game.
Exactly. If they could start Pierre Garçon at quarterback and he'll throw 3 touchdowns.
He totally would. I actually am going to go and play quarterback in Week 11 for the Redskins. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's a dream come true. Let's talk about some of these good and bad performances back in Week 6 and glean some information about what we see going forward. Let's start off with a bad performance by Zach Stacy. He had 10 touches and 34 yards, and then his backfield mates, Benny Cunningham, had 9 touches for 33 yards and a touchdown. And Trey Mason had a little appearance, War Eagle, Auburn, 6 touches, 52 yards. This is a mess. This backfield is, I don't know. Jacksonville's still worse, but it's a mess. What do you does he have any value?
No, Benny Cunningham got the touchdown at the goal line. That's the only reason he had any fantasy value last week. Although I will say that I was watching a friend of mine's fantasy score with great anticipation that Benny Cunningham would score that touchdown, and it worked out. So, but generally speaking, there's just no value back there. You're stepping into a bad craps game if you're if you're playing any of these guys. Really, I mean, Zach Stacy, I think I saw that he wasn't practicing. He had an ankle injury. Maybe that was a problem. And maybe that's going forward. If he's feeling better, he'll be the guy to own. I think Trey Mason. If you're going to take a shot at Trey Mason. He looked great. He's not good in pass protection, so I don't know how much he's going to be on the field. But running the ball, he looked great.
I'd say steer clear, and if you can get RB3 value for Stacy, dump him. Be done.
Get rid of him.
Yeah, this may be a sell low situation. I think he's in trouble. If someone will give you top 25 running back value for Stacy, move on. On the flip side of it, it looks like Jerick McKinnon might get a little bit more opportunities. This past week, he had a lot more snaps than Matt Asiata. He had 47 snaps to 16 snaps, and then he had 17 touches compared to 5 touches for Asiata. Do you think this is a changing of the guard or just a one-game game plan?
I think it's a one-game plan. Unfortunately, I think that McKinnon is obviously the more talented running back. He too has pass protection issues, and obviously he's newer to the position in general. So I think that that's going to kind of cause issues with predicting his playing time. I read something on Twitter today saying that the coaches are going to try to get Ozzy out of the ball more, which almost made me fall asleep reading that. But it seems like it seems like McKinnon's not out of the woods.
Yeah, I don't think he's out of the woods, but I'm still excited about him. I think he could have a really good second half of the season. It's going to be some inconsistency, but I think he's still going to get 15 touches a game. I think he can do a lot with 15 touches a game. I think it's going to be good for him. I'm not saying he's like top 20 running back, but he's maybe just outside of that for me. I think he could put up some good numbers.
Yeah, I mean he's a worthwhile pickup if he's still available, or if somebody's got him in a package deal or you're getting him cheap.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go for it. A guy that I'm really high on is Andre Holmes. I tried to get him high in my preseason rankings this offseason, and he has had a huge week this past week. He had 4 catches for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. Is he the new number 1 receiver in Oakland? Has he passed James Jones in the favor of Derek Carr here?
I hope so. I mean, I think that he's more talented. He's the most talented receiver in that wide receiver core there. So it seems like it. He's got 7 targets and converted 4 of them to, he's not going to do 4 catches for 121 yards very often. But I think that he's got the most upside. And I picked him up. I spent a good chunk of my fab in one league to pick him up, where I lost Victor Cruz. And I think that he's definitely my pickup of the week.
Yeah, I think he's huge, and we'll get to it later, but I have some recommendations that may be related to him in daily fantasy later. That's a tease. Then we saw some, resurgent performances from a few quarterbacks this past week. Joe Flacco, Tom Brady, and to a lesser degree, Carson Palmer. It was just good to see Palmer back. Flacco had, was it 5 touchdowns in the first half?
Wacko for Flacco. He had 5 touchdowns. He had 4 touchdowns before anybody could sit down with their nachos at home watching the game. He had 5 touchdowns in the middle of the second quarter. It looked like he was going to blow away Peyton Manning's record at one point, or whatever. Is it Peyton? They're tied, right? It's a 7 touchdowns.
Nick Foles got 7, I think, last.
That's right.
Last season record as well.
Yeah, it's Nick Foles record.
The vaunted Nick Foles record. He almost got. He was on pace.
But, I'm not really sold on that performance, and I would totally sell him if somebody was buying. I mean, I don't know who would buy Joe. Oh, no offense to Mr. Flacco, but I don't know
mom.
So, yeah, exactly. It was the Tampa Bay defense. I think Flacco's going to have his ups and downs. He's good for a few big games a year, but that was one of them, and I don't buy him season long.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is because he scored 5 touchdowns in a quarter and a half, if you extrapolate that out over an entire season, he's on pace for 100 touchdowns this year. I think that's what I hear you saying. So, I'll buy him. I'll trade you Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
That seems like a good deal.
Peyton Manning for Joe Flacco, that's what I'm saying.
Seems fair. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm not buying the Joe Flacco thing here. He's still a quarterback too. In a good matchup. I'd go after him. I think actually this week, I think he has a good matchup. I can't remember who he's playing off the top of my head. But, he's a matchup play for me. And Torrey Smith, I ain't buying it. Steve Smith is still the guy in this offense that you want. And Torrey Smith, for me, I don't think he's a wide receiver 3. I think he's outside the top 35 at receiver the rest of the way. This is a mirage. Move along. Are you buying Torrey Smith here?
Yeah, he's the guy that has kind of he had his name, in the preseason, a little bit of hype, and maybe you can cash in on that now.
Yeah, I would say sell high on Torrey Smith if you can at this point. How about Tom Brady? He had 4 touchdowns in this game. Looked like he was having more connection with Brandon LaFell. Looked like Gronkowski was getting into the action here. It's 2 games in a row where Brady has looked a little bit better than his kind of terrible start. Are you buying this a little bit?
Well, I don't remember. I think a couple weeks ago, after that terrible performance in Kansas City, I said that you should buy low on Brady, and I'm not sure if I said it on here, but I mentioned it somewhere. Maybe it was just in my head, but I think that
I think you told your 4-year-old daughter at breakfast.
Yes, and she told me her favorite color was pink at that point. But
that is also sound fantasy advice.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, if you were going to sell or buy low on Brady, there was no lower point, I think, than the Kansas City game, and I thought he was going to bounce back. I didn't expect him to bounce back in such a big way, but I think Gronkowski being more and more healthy, he's playing more and more. His connection with Brandon LaFell improving. He seems to be the number 2 receiver now. Even maybe the number 1. Maybe Edelman's kind of the slot guy that is. We haven't seen a lot from Edelman really in the last several weeks. He's usually he's not the guy that caught 100 passes for 1,000 yards and whatever many touchdowns last year. So, if LaFell is playing well, Gronkowski is playing well, I think that Brady is kind of back to QB1 status.
Yeah, I could see him maybe like, not quite top 12. I could see him like top 15.
Well, obviously, if you have a good quarterback, second quarterback, like maybe a Joe Flacco or something, then you would play the matchups. But, I think that you can rest easy knowing that Brady is going to be fine going forward.
Yeah. I'd rather have Brady than Flacco the rest of the way. Would you agree with that, or is it kind of doesn't matter?
Flacco's gonna throw for 100 touchdowns. What are you talking about?
I mean, I'd much rather have Flacco. Go trade him now. Then Carson Palmer came back from his injury, and he seemed to have a connection with his old pal Larry Fitzgerald. So instead of Michael Floyd, it seemed to he's in your favor.
In your face.
Suck it, Trebek.
I believe you doubted Mr. Fitzgerald several weeks ago, and I said you should buy low on Mr. Fitzgerald. So
I still doubt it. I would say
great.
buy low on Michael Floyd. Buy low on Michael Floyd.
He had a touchdown. How can you buy low on Michael Floyd? He had a pretty good game too. But Fitzgerald got a ton of targets. He looked great. How can you sell on that?
Yeah, I'd sell Fitzgerald. If someone's buying it, I'd sell. If someone would give you like top 25 wide receiver value for Fitzgerald,
if somebody offered you Michael Floyd for Larry Fitzgerald, would you take that deal?
I would love Michael Floyd instead of Larry Fitzgerald. Oh yeah, in a heartbeat.
Okay.
Yeah, we should wager something silly on that.
For Larry Fitzgerald.
No, I'm not going that low.
I'm trying to gauge my trade offers. No, I'm not in the league with Austin right now, so.
No, but yeah, I want to wager like a bad lip sync video or something on Larry Fitzgerald versus Michael Floyd. We'll talk about that off air. So those are some of the notable performances in Week 6. If you want to see our Week 7 rankings, you can always go and check those out at the9route.com. That's where you can get our latest podcast episodes, see our rankings, find all our social media, hoobity-hoo. It's all there on the9route.com. Let's get into...
We don't have that up yet. We haven't done any yet.
Wait, what are you promising our listeners?
It's our little secret, listeners. You heard me.
Oh crap! I don't know what I'm in for. All right, so our social media manager of the 9 Route is on a rampage. Let's talk about some of.
We need to have a credits roll for what we we have like Austin and Alex, the podcast hosts, and then like Austin's the web designer, and I'm the social media manager. It'd
just be me and you back and forth.
It's pretty. I'm impressed. Mostly with Austin.
And at the bottom it'll be like Dan Smith, BYU. So let's talk about some of our daily fantasy sports picks over at DraftKings and FanDuel. I've got some picks here at DraftKings. I teased it earlier. I actually really like my stack of the week is Derek Carr and Andre Holmes versus Arizona. Derek Carr is only 5,800. Andre Holmes only 4,800. Arizona leads the league in yards allowed per game. And Alex, what do you think of that?
You know what? I mocked you last week. Well, not mock. I wasn't mocking, but I I made fun of you last week for talking about that Arizona defense because I said, they had just faced Peyton Manning, they had faced Phillip Rivers, and I forgot the other two guys, but they had a big quarterback issue the first 4 games of the season where they faced, and so I was like, there's no way that's going to hold up. And then Kirk Cousins come to town and has a terrible game, but throws for a lot of yards and touchdowns. So
Kirk Cousins.
So I think that it's a pretty good. I can't argue with that at this point.
Sweet. I thought you were going to mock it. I was worried about that. What
now
they're
going to have a terrible game because I didn't mock it. That's how at the 9.
Man, that's how we work here at the 9 round. If it
By the way, I had a terrible week ranking kickers last week, and I blame you entirely. I had my half the percentage that I usually have.
I wasn't going to bring that up. I was going to spare you the embarrassment, but yeah.
It's all your fault. I blame you.
Yeah, you should be ashamed. That was.
It was a terrible. I think I had one of the worst. Never mind. Anyway.
Yeah. So don't send kicker questions to Alex anymore.
I did that. I did it for that reason, so that people would stop sending me kicker questions. Although Matt Prater was a bad call, as I mentioned last week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He continued the terrible streak for the Detroit Kickers. Of terrible performances. So tell me about a quarterback that you like over at DraftKings. Tell me some pricing you like over there.
Well, Peyton Manning is only on the 9,000, which is for Peyton Manning is actually a pretty good price. I don't know why he's only 9,000. He's at home. He's probably he's facing San Francisco. It's a pretty good defense, but it's Peyton Manning. I mean, he had a good game against Seattle on the road. Took that last drive to kind of get him there. But I think that he's going to have another big game. And usually, top-priced quarterbacks don't meet their value, but at 9,000, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, here's a question for you. Something that I kind of struggle with as I'm making especially my GPP lineups, is do you sort of look at the top few guys at each position and go, you know what, I can't choose those guys just because I know everyone else is going to choose them and I want to be different. Do you think about that, or are you just like, whatever, value's value?
You try to. I think you need to try to have differentiators in your lineup. So yeah, I do think about that. It's tough to know what everybody's going to pick, because there's a lot of people who probably see similar values. So you have to kind of guess at. I know that there's some sites that show Thursday lineup percentages, but and then I think that's going away in most on most sites. So, I mean, if it's a guy that I really like at the top, I'll start him. I mean, usually I don't spend that money at quarterback because I feel like there's so many quarterbacks that are good value that I don't like to spend a lot. But for a guy like Peyton Manning this week at that price, having gotten burned by a lot of middling priced quarterbacks in the past couple of weeks, he's a guy that I would pay for, I think.
Yeah, and you can find value at other positions if you go with that. I mean, there have been winning lineups where people stacked Peyton and Thomas and Thomas, the Thomas brothers.
I tell you what, a couple weeks ago, I forgot what my lineup was. I stacked Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson, and they won me a lot of money. And they were expensive, but they won me a lot of money. So it's you have to. I didn't win like $1 million, but they won me a couple contests.
Yeah, it was a good week for you. I think the point is that stick with your values, stick with your projections, and if it makes sense mathematically, just roll with it. Just go with the guys that you think are going to score points, and good things will happen. How about at running back? I like your pick here. I'm looking at your notes. Eddie Lacy is only 4,700. And he's at Carolina. Carolina doesn't quite have that threatening defense that they have had in previous years, and so I think at this low of value, a guy like Lacy, I think that's a good pick on your part there.
Yeah, Lacy's had his ups and downs. He had another down last week against a pretty good Miami run defense. The Miami run defense has been pretty good in most games. So I didn't expect a huge game out of him. I didn't expect that bad of a game out of him, but I think that depressed his value enough this week that he's worthwhile at 4,700 is an excellent price for a guy who I think, just a couple weeks ago, we saw what he could do. He had a monster game, and not necessarily going to have 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he'll meet value if he scores a touchdown, and I think he will.
Yeah. What about our boy Lamar Miller? We talked about him earlier. He's a little more expensive than Lacy, but he's at Chicago and he's 5,300.
That's a pretty good price.
You take a gamble on?
That's a pretty good price for a guy who's going to get the majority of the touches now, and has pass catching value. I mean, he's probably going to catch 3 or 4 passes, the touchdown. He's scored a decent number of touchdowns this year. I don't know that he's going to get to if he doesn't get in the end zone, then it'll be a letdown because he might only have 60 or 70 total yards. But worth it at 5,300, I think, worth the price. A guy that I really like this week is I think I'm my number one in my rankings actually. He's Andre Ellington. He's 6,500, so it's not cheap, but very good price still, considering that he's facing one of the worst run defenses in the league in Oakland. Oakland's got a terrible run defense, and case in point, Lamar Miller ran all over them a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. I think I've had Ellington in my DFS lineups almost every week that he's been healthy, just because I feel like his value has been low. And I think this may be the last week where that happens. This may be the last week where his value is low enough that it's a good value.
Ellington's one of those guys that I can almost never resist every week, at least in a couple of my lineups. And another guy who I just keep hammering away at and getting burned by is Percy Harvin, who's great value, but has a couple weeks ago he could have scored a couple touchdowns, and then last week I don't know what the Seahawks were doing on offense. He got 4 touches or 5 touches on that. It was ridiculous.
You can't trust Percy Harvin, man. It's a run first, low play count offense. But
he's not even. I mean, come on, he's their best receiver, and he's not even being targeted. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
What are you going to do? I mean, he's going to have a couple big games, but it's going to be after you've given up on him. Just
Yeah. Well, this week he's really cheap. I think he's 4,100 this week. It's kind of hard to resist.
That's true. That's pretty cheap. That's pretty darn cheap for an upside guy. I mean, it might be a good play in a big tournament. At tight end, we both really like Jordan Cameron. He had a big game last week. He's 4,600 at DraftKings, and he's at Jacksonville this week. I think that the offense is heavy on the run, but when they go to the air, they're looking for Jordan Cameron, and I think that makes him pretty valuable here, especially at only 4,600. Is there another guy that stands out to you at DraftKings before we move over to FanDuel?
I think that Larry Donald, he's had a rough couple weeks. He had that touchdown last week that was called back. It was a great catch. And now with Victor Cruz gone, I think he's another guy that's going to benefit a little bit. And he's got a fantastic matchup this week. The Cowboys have kind of buttoned up against tight ends in the past couple weeks, but they haven't faced good tight ends in the past couple weeks. So I think that Larry Donald could have a huge game, actually, in Dallas.
Yeah, I can see. He's got good upside, especially at such a cheap value. Yeah. I also like Devontae Adams. He's 3,900, and I think he's another upside guy. He hasn't been putting up huge weeks yet, but he could be a guy that if you want a low value receiver with some upside, I think he's a guy to look at DraftKings. Let's shift over to FanDuel, and over there it's only half PPR, not the full PPR that we've got at DraftKings, and there's kickers. So Alex is excited about that because he loves him some kickers. Tell me about FanDuel. What are some guys you like over at FanDuel this week?
Okay, we're gonna do this on the fly because I did not write it. I didn't have time to write anything down.
No preparation for FanDuel.
Totally ad-libbed, testing my improv skills.
All right.
So, but
I need a suggestion from the audience of something you use in the kitchen.
Okay. I hope I don't get forked by. No.
That was fantastic.
It's a PG show. That's as far as I go.
Yeah. So what do you got? What do you got? I'm just killing time here, so you could look at FanDuel.
No. I'm ready. I was ready. I have my first guy is Brian Hoyer this week over at FanDuel. He's 6,300 going up against Jacksonville. I like him probably over DraftKings too. I don't know exactly what his price is, but he only completed 8 passes last week. Everybody's making a big deal about that. One of them was a 51-yard touchdown to Jordan Cameron. So and Jacksonville's defense is not very good. So I think that Hoyer could have kind of sneaky value.
That Cleveland quarterback seems reminiscent of, what was that? Was it Derek Anderson, where he would complete 2 passes in a game or something crazy like that for the Browns a few years ago?
Yes, but the Browns are actually pretty good this year.
Yes.
Those words have just opened up the apocalypse.
Comparing Brian Hoyer to Derek Anderson.
The seventh seal has been broken. Because
oh dear, head for the hills.
Now I'm killing time.
Give me one other player at FanDuel, and then we'll wrap it up.
We're gonna go through positions. All
right.
So at running back, a guy that I like a lot this week, in general, is Justin Forsett. He's the guy for the Baltimore Ravens at running back. It seems to be. I mean, we saw Bernard Pierce score last week, but that was in garbage time. I think that Forsett is getting the start. He's getting the touches. The meaningful touches, and he's only 6,200 over at FanDuel, and I mean he's facing the Atlanta Falcons, which have given up a lot of points to running backs.
Yeah, they're terrible defense. Terrible defense. It's true.
Another guy I like at running back, Chris Ivory. He's had the Jets' offense is not very good, but I'll give you that. But the New England defense has given up a lot of points to running backs this year too. So I think that the Jets could try to ground and pound their way towards victory this week, and I think that Ivory is the guy to own, and he's only 5,400.
Yeah, that seems like a good deal. I think Chris Johnson is definitely falling out of favor there in New York, so I think Ivory is going to see a little more action.
So. No. So
this wouldn't be complete without a kicker pick. You have to give a kicker pick.
I'm a wide receiver. We're going through each position. I mean, so Andre Holmes. You talked about Andre Holmes, and he's not only a good deal at DraftKings. I think he's a great deal at FanDuel. He's only 6,000 over there. A nice stackability. Let's see where Carr is. But at 6,000 for a guy with that upside. See, Carr is only at 6,800, which is more expensive than Hoyer, but that's a pretty good price for a stack, I think, between Carr and Holmes. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the pricing better at DraftKings, but that's not too bad for FanDuel. FanDuel's budget is $10,000 more, so the pricing isn't completely relative. I think FanDuel's 60,000 for your roster, and DraftKings only 50,000. So I think their pricing is a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, there's not that. I mean, the values there are not, fantastic at wide receiver this week. I don't think I love anything else. Maybe if you buy Keenan Allen, I think that Allen's kind of had depressed value, but I think he's at 6,500. It's not bad. The wide receiver prices are kind of all jumbled together in the that range. So over there, the values anyway. So at tight end. Larry Donnell, again, he's only 5,500 over at FanDuel. A little bit more expensive, I think, relatively speaking, than at DraftKings, but that's still a pretty good price. Dwayne Allen is 5,700. I like him a lot. I think that this week he bounces back. Last week I was down on him, and he wasn't very good, but this week I think he bounces back a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds good.
You're just like not killing time on purpose. You're like, yeah.
No. I'm doing that on purpose. I'm totally doing it. No, but
I'll give you one kicker. I talked about him a couple weeks ago. Nick Novak. It's only 5,000 over at FanDuel.
Nick Novak. He's the guy who's going to save your fantasy team. Here, I'll kill just a couple seconds here. My dad's in town. He wants to peek in on the show. Come peek in on the show, Dad. Well, I don't have a mic for you, but you can wave and say hi.
Hey guys.
Most people only listen to this on audio, but this is my pop here. You can tell he's an Auburn fan.
War Eagle, yeah.
War Eagle. All right. Okay. There, I killed some time for you.
And that's our show.
And that's our show. Exactly. Hey, you got any articles coming out? Anything that we should be looking for in the coming week?
No, actually, this week the whole family got sick this week, so I totally begged off on my midweek stuff, and so I don't have anything right now. I just recovered today, and maybe that made me a little loopy for the show. So I apologize to our fans if I was a little I don't know.
He's hopped up on cold medicine. Don't listen to anything he said this week.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being on the show, even though you weren't feeling so well this week, and I hope you feel better. And we'll try to get a guest on in the coming weeks. And we appreciate you listening. If you want to listen to our show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes and on Stitcher. That way you can get our latest episode as quickly as possible once we post it to our website, the9route.com. And if you want to talk to Alex on Twitter, you can find him at Alex Miglio. If you want to talk to me, you can find me at Austin NFL. And you can find our writing over at footballguys.com, where we write, and also Alex at Bleacher Report. Thank you so much for listening. For Alex, for me, for my dad visiting from out of town, thank you for listening. And until next time, may your players stay healthy, your sleepers wake up, and your Monday nights be filled with miraculous comebacks. Good night.